The stagecoach lurched to a stop in front of the Williamsburg, Virginia depot, and Zelda Wright pressed her gloved hand against the window, feeling her heart hammer against her ribs as dust settled around the wheels like a shroud of her past life being left behind forever. She stepped down onto the wooden platform with trembling legs, clutching a single worn carpetbag that contained everything she owned in this world, which was not much at all. The August heat of 1872 pressed down on her shoulders like a physical weight, and she could feel the dampness gathering beneath the high collar of her traveling dress. The fabric covered her from neck to wrist to ankle, despite the oppressive warmth, and she was grateful for it. The scars hidden beneath the cloth were her secret, her shame, her history written in raised tissue and faded marks that she prayed no one would ever see. "Miss Wright," a voice cut through her anxious thoughts, deep and steady as a river stone. She turned to find a man standing a respectful distance away, hat in his hands. He was tall, with shoulders broad enough to carry the weight of hard work, and eyes the color of spring grass that studied her with an intensity that made her want to look away. But she did not. She had learned long ago that looking away only invited more cruelty. "Yes," she said, forcing her voice to remain level. "I am Zelda Wright." "Russell Owen," he said, taking a step closer. "I reckon you are expecting me." She had been expecting someone, though the advertisements for mail-order brides rarely gave much detail about the men on the other end of the arrangement. Russell Owen looked to be around 30 years old, with sun-bronzed skin and dark hair that curled slightly at his collar. There was something in his face that spoke of kindness, but Zelda had been fooled by kind faces before. "I am," she replied, keeping her carpetbag clutched tightly in both hands. Russell seemed to notice her defensive posture, and he kept his distance, which surprised her. Most men would have already been trying to take her bag, to establish ownership, to show their authority. But Russell simply gestured toward a wagon hitched to 2 sturdy horses. "I have got a ranch about 5 miles outside of town," he said. "It is not much, but it is honest work and honest living. I hope that will suit you." Zelda nodded, not trusting herself to speak. The journey from Philadelphia had been long and exhausting, and she had spent most of it wondering if she was making the worst mistake of her life. But then again, staying in Philadelphia would have been worse. Her uncle had made certain of that. Russell helped her into the wagon with a gentle hand under her elbow, and even that brief touch made her flinch. She saw the flicker of concern cross his face, but he said nothing, simply walked around to the other side and climbed up beside her. The ride out to the ranch was quiet at first. Zelda kept her eyes on the landscape rolling past, the green fields and scattered farmhouses, the distant blue ridge of mountains that seemed to promise something she could not quite name. Freedom, perhaps, or simply the absence of pain. "I should tell you," Russell said after a while, his voice careful, "that I am not looking for anything you are not willing to give. The arrangement we made through the letters, that still stands. You will have your own room until you decide otherwise. I am a patient man, Miss Wright." Zelda felt something in her chest loosen just slightly. "I appreciate that, Mr. Owen." "Russell," he corrected gently. "I would prefer you call me Russell. Then you must call me Zelda." He glanced at her, and she saw the corner of his mouth lift in what might have been a smile. "Zelda," he repeated, as if testing the weight of her name. "That is a strong name." She did not know how to respond to that, so she said nothing. They rode in companionable silence for the rest of the journey, and when the ranch finally came into view, Zelda felt a strange flutter of something that might have been hope. The ranch was modest but well-maintained. A sturdy house with a covered porch, a barn that looked freshly painted, and several corrals where horses grazed in the late afternoon sun. Russell pulled the wagon to a stop in front of the house and came around to help her down. "Welcome home, Zelda," he said, and the sincerity in his voice nearly undid her. She followed him inside, noting the clean floors and simple furniture. Everything was neat and orderly, the home of a man who took pride in his surroundings. Russell showed her to a small bedroom at the back of the house, and Zelda was relieved to see that it had a sturdy door with a lock. "I will let you rest and freshen up," Russell said. "Supper will be ready in about an hour. Nothing fancy, just stew and biscuits." After he left, Zelda closed the door and leaned against it, finally allowing herself to breathe. She set her carpetbag on the bed and looked around the room. It was simple but clean, with a window that looked out over the fields. There was a washstand with a pitcher and basin, and someone had left a vase of wildflowers on the dresser. She walked to the window and pressed her forehead against the cool glass. She had made it. She was here. Whatever came next, at least she was far away from Philadelphia, far away from her uncle and his violent temper, far away from the locked room where she had spent too many nights nursing fresh wounds. When she finally emerged for supper, she found Russell in the kitchen, ladling stew into 2 bowls. He had changed into a clean shirt and combed his hair, and she realized with a start that he had made an effort for her. They ate at a small table near the window, and Russell asked her careful questions about her journey, about Philadelphia, about things that did not require her to reveal too much. She answered as best she could, grateful for his tact. "I should probably tell you about the ranch," Russell said after they had finished eating. "I raise horses mostly, train them for ranchers and settlers heading west. It is good work, keeps me busy. I have got a hand who comes in most days to help with the heavier work. Name is Jacob. Good man, been with me for 3 years. It sounds like honest work," Zelda said. "It is," Russell agreed. "I do not have much, but what I have I earned. No one can take that from me." There was something in the way he said it that made Zelda look at him more closely. She saw the old scar along his jaw, barely visible in the lamplight, and the way his hands bore the marks of hard labor. Russell Owen had his own stories, his own scars, even if they were not hidden beneath layers of fabric. Over the next few days, Zelda began to settle into a routine. She woke early and prepared breakfast, cleaned the house, and tended to the small vegetable garden behind the kitchen. Russell was true to his word, giving her space and time to adjust. He worked long hours with the horses, coming in only for meals and the occasional cup of coffee on the porch in the evening. Zelda found herself watching him when she thought he was not looking. She watched the way he moved with the horses, patient and firm, never raising his voice or his hand in anger. She watched the way he spoke to Jacob, with respect and good humor. She watched the way he always asked permission before entering a room where she was working, the way he never crowded her space or made demands. It was so different from what she had known that she hardly knew what to make of it. One evening, about a week after her arrival, Zelda was sitting on the porch shelling peas when Russell came and sat down on the steps nearby. He did not say anything at first, just watched the sun setting over the fields, painting everything in shades of gold and crimson. "You have done a fine job with the garden," he said eventually. "Those tomatoes are coming in better than I ever managed." "I enjoy the work," Zelda replied. It was true. There was something soothing about putting her hands in the soil, about nurturing things that would grow and flourish. Russell was quiet for a moment, then said, "Zelda, I want you to know that you are safe here. Whatever you are running from, whatever happened before you came here, you do not have to tell me unless you want to, but I want you to know that you are safe." Zelda's hands stilled in her work. She felt her throat tighten with unexpected emotion. "How did you know I was running from something?" "I recognized the look," Russell said simply. "I have seen it before. Hell, I have worn it myself." She looked at him then, really looked at him, and saw the truth in his eyes. "What were you running from?" Russell leaned back against the porch post and crossed his arms. "My father," he said. "He was a hard man, believed that love was weakness and that children needed to be beaten into submission. I took it for years, took it to protect my younger sister. When I was 18, I finally fought back, left him unconscious on the floor and took my sister with me. We came here, started over. She is married now, living in Richmond with a good man and 3 beautiful children." Zelda felt tears sting her eyes. "I am sorry you went through that." "I am not looking for pity," Russell said. "I am just telling you so you know that I understand, and so you know that I would never raise a hand to you, Zelda. Not ever. That is not the kind of man I am." The tears spilled over then, and Zelda could not stop them. She put her hands over her face, trying to muffle the sobs that wrenched through her. She heard Russell move, and then felt him sit down beside her on the porch bench, not touching her but close enough that she could feel his solid presence. "It is all right," he said quietly. "Let it out. You are safe here." She cried for a long time, for all the years of fear and pain, for all the times she had prayed for escape, for the relief of finally being somewhere that felt like sanctuary. When she finally stopped, Russell handed her a clean handkerchief without comment. "Thank you," she whispered. "No need for thanks," he said. "We all need a place to land sometimes." That night, Zelda lay in her bed and felt something shift inside her. Russell Owen was a good man. She had not believed such men existed, but here was proof. And for the first time since she had arrived, she allowed herself to think that maybe, just maybe, this could work. The following weeks passed in a blur of domestic routine and careful conversations. Zelda continued to manage the house and garden, and Russell continued to work with the horses. But slowly, carefully, they began to share more with each other. Russell told her about his dreams of expanding the ranch, about wanting to breed horses that would be known for their intelligence and spirit. Zelda told him about her love of reading, about the few precious books she had managed to bring with her, about her dream of one day having a library. "There is a bookshop in Williamsburg," Russell said one evening. "Next time I go into town, you should come with me, pick out a few books." Zelda felt a warmth spread through her chest. "I would like that very much." True to his word, Russell took her into town the following Saturday. Zelda had been nervous about going, worried about meeting the townspeople and facing their judgment. But Russell introduced her proudly as his wife, and the people of Williamsburg were kind and welcoming. The bookshop owner, an elderly woman named Mrs. Patterson, took an immediate liking to Zelda and insisted on giving her a discount on a stack of novels. On the ride home, with the books wrapped carefully in brown paper and sitting in her lap, Zelda felt something she had not felt in years. Happiness. Pure, uncomplicated happiness. "Thank you, Russell," she said, "for everything." He glanced at her, his green eyes warm. "You do not need to thank me, Zelda. Seeing you smile is thanks enough." She felt her cheeks heat, but she did not look away. There was something happening between them, something she had not expected when she first stepped off that stagecoach. She was beginning to care for Russell Owen, truly care for him, and the realization was both thrilling and terrifying. That night, after supper, they sat on the porch together as had become their habit. The evening was cool for late August, with a breeze that carried the scent of hay and horses and growing things. Russell was whittling a piece of wood, his hands moving with practiced ease, and Zelda was reading one of her new books by lamplight. "Zelda," Russell said after a while, setting down his whittling, "can I ask you something?" She looked up from her book. "Of course." "Why did you answer my advertisement? I mean, I know you were looking to leave Philadelphia, but why a mail-order bride arrangement?" You could have found work as a seamstress or a teacher, could have started fresh without tying yourself to a stranger. Zelda closed her book and set it aside. It was a fair question, and Russell deserved an honest answer. I was afraid, she said simply. My uncle had connections throughout Philadelphia, and I was terrified he would find me if I stayed in the city. Coming here, becoming someone's wife, it gave me a legitimate reason to leave and a new name to hide behind. I thought it would be safer. What did your uncle do to you? Russell asked, his voice low. Zelda looked down at her hands, at the gloves she still wore even in the evening heat. He hurt me, she said quietly. For years. After my parents died when I was 12, I went to live with him. He was my only living relative. At first he just ignored me, but as I got older his temper grew worse. He would find any excuse to punish me. A meal not cooked to his liking, a floor not scrubbed clean enough, a look he did not care for. He would lock me in my room for days without food. He would. She trailed off, unable to continue. Russell was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough with controlled anger. I wish I could have 5 minutes alone with that man. He is not worth your anger, Zelda said. He is not worth anything. No, Russell agreed, but you are. You are worth everything, Zelda. She looked up at him, surprised by the intensity in his voice. Their eyes met, and she saw something there that made her breath catch. It was not just kindness or sympathy. It was something deeper, something that made her heart race. Russell, she began, but he shook his head. You do not have to say anything, he said. I just wanted you to know, I see you, Zelda, not the scars or the fear. I see your strength. I see how hard you work, how kind you are to the animals, how you hum when you think no one is listening. I see you, and I think you are remarkable. Zelda felt tears prick her eyes again, but these were different from the tears she had shed before. These were tears of something like joy, something like hope. No one has ever said anything like that to me before. Then everyone else was a fool, Russell said firmly. They sat in silence after that, but it was a comfortable silence, charged with new understanding. Zelda found herself wanting to reach out and touch him, to close the distance between them, but she was not quite ready for that yet. Not quite. The summer turned to autumn, and with it came cooler temperatures and the hard work of preparing for winter. Zelda threw herself into preserving vegetables from the garden, canning and pickling and drying. Russell worked on repairing the barn roof and making sure the horses would be comfortable through the cold months ahead. They had fallen into an easy partnership, working side by side, anticipating each other's needs. Jacob commented on it one day while he was helping Russell mend a fence. You two work together like you have been married for years, he said, a knowing smile on his weathered face. Russell felt his ears redden. She is a hard worker. She is more than that, Jacob said. She is good for you, boss. I have never seen you this happy. Russell could not deny it. He was happy, happier than he had been in years. Zelda had brought life to the ranch in ways he had not expected. But more than that, she had brought life to him. He found himself looking forward to the end of each day, to those quiet hours on the porch when they would talk about everything and nothing. He loved the sound of her laugh, rare but genuine when it came. He loved the way she sang softly to herself while she worked. He loved everything about her. He realized with a start, falling in love with his own wife. The realization hit him one evening in late September. They had gone for a walk after supper, strolling through the fields as the sun set. Zelda had picked a handful of wildflowers and was arranging them absently as they walked. The fading light caught in her dark hair, turning it to burnished copper, and Russell felt his heart constrict with the force of his feelings. Zelda, he said, stopping in the middle of the field. She turned to look at him, the flowers still clutched in her hand. Yes. I need to tell you something, he said, trying to find the right words. I know we entered into this arrangement as a practical matter, but something has changed for me. I have grown to care for you deeply, more than deeply. I think I am falling in love with you, and I needed you to know that. Zelda stood very still, her eyes wide. For a moment, Russell feared he had made a terrible mistake, that he had pushed too hard too fast. But then she smiled, a real smile that lit up her entire face. I am falling in love with you too, she said softly. I did not think I could ever feel this way about anyone, but you have shown me what kindness looks like, what respect looks like. You have given me a home and safety and so much more than I ever dared to hope for. Russell took a step closer, his heart pounding. May I kiss you? Yes, she whispered. He cupped her face gently in his hands and lowered his lips to hers. The kiss was soft and sweet, full of promise and tenderness. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were smiling. I have wanted to do that for weeks, Russell admitted. I am glad you finally did, Zelda said. Her cheeks flushed pink. They walked back to the house hand in hand, and that night, for the first time since her arrival, Zelda did not lock her bedroom door. She lay in bed thinking about Russell, about the way he had kissed her, about the future that suddenly seemed bright and full of possibility. Over the next few weeks, their relationship deepened. They stole kisses in the barn, held hands under the table during meals, and spent their evenings talking and dreaming about the future. But there was still one barrier between them, one secret that Zelda had not yet shared. It came to a head one evening in mid-October. Zelda had been kneading bread dough when she lost her grip on the bowl. It fell, shattering on the floor, and without thinking, she bent to pick up the pieces. One of the shards sliced across her wrist, cutting through the thin fabric of her sleeve and opening a gash that immediately began to bleed. Russell, who had been sitting at the table going over accounts, was at her side in an instant. Let me see, he said, reaching for her arm. Zelda pulled away instinctively, cradling her injured wrist against her chest. It is fine, she said. Just a small cut. Zelda, you are bleeding, Russell said firmly. Please let me help you. Slowly, reluctantly, she held out her arm. Russell gently pushed up her sleeve to examine the wound, and as he did, he saw the scars. They crisscrossed her wrist and forearm, some old and faded, some more recent. His hand stilled, and Zelda felt her stomach drop. Zelda, he said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. I know, she said, trying to pull her arm away again. I know they are ugly. I know they are shameful. You do not have to say it. But Russell did not let go. Instead, he held her arm gently and looked up at her with eyes that were bright with unshed tears. They are not ugly, he said. They are not shameful. They are proof of what you survived. They are proof of your strength. Zelda felt her own tears begin to fall. I have them everywhere, she whispered. My arms, my back, my legs. He said I deserved them. He said I was worthless and ugly and that no one would ever want me. He was wrong, Russell said fiercely. He was wrong about everything. You are beautiful, Zelda. You are strong and brave and beautiful, and these scars do not change that. If anything, they make me love you more because they are part of your story, part of what made you who you are. He carefully cleaned and bandaged the cut on her wrist, his touch gentle and sure. When he was finished, he brought her hand to his lips and kissed her palm softly. Thank you, Zelda said through her tears. Thank you for seeing me. Always, Russell promised. I will always see you. That night, Zelda went to Russell's room. She stood in the doorway, nervous but determined, and he looked up from where he sat on the edge of the bed, surprise and hope warring on his face. Are you sure? He asked. I am sure, she said. I love you, Russell. I want to be your wife in every way. He crossed the room and took her hands in his. I will be gentle, he promised. I will never hurt you. I know, she said, and she meant it. She trusted him completely. They made love slowly, carefully, with Russell treating her like she was something precious and fragile. He kissed every scar he found, murmuring words of love and encouragement, showing her with his body what his words had already promised. It was nothing like what Zelda had feared, nothing like the violence she had endured. It was tender and sweet and healing in ways she had not known she needed. Afterwards, they lay tangled together in the sheets, Russell's arm around her waist and Zelda's head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "Are you all right?" he asked, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "I am more than all right," she said. "I am happy." "Good," Russell said, "because I plan on making you happy for the rest of our lives." Zelda tilted her head up to look at him. "I am going to hold you to that promise, Mr. Owen." He grinned and kissed her soundly. "I would expect nothing less, Mrs. Owen." The winter came, bringing cold winds and occasional snow. Zelda and Russell weathered it together, spending long evenings by the fire, reading aloud to each other or simply sitting in comfortable silence. They talked about expanding the ranch in the spring, about maybe getting a few chickens and a milk cow. They talked about children, about the family they both wanted to build. "I want our children to grow up knowing they are loved," Zelda said one evening. "I want them to never fear us, to never doubt that they are safe." "They will," Russell promised. "We will make sure of it." By the time spring arrived, Zelda suspected she was pregnant. She waited another month to be certain before telling Russell, wanting to be sure before she raised his hopes. When she finally confirmed it with the doctor in town, she could barely contain her excitement. She told Russell that evening on the porch, their favorite place. "I have some news," she said, unable to keep the smile from her face. Russell looked at her, his expression curious. "What is it?" "We are going to have a baby," she said. "In the autumn, I think." For a moment, Russell just stared at her, and then he let out a whoop of joy that probably scared the horses. He swept her up in his arms and spun her around, both of them laughing. "We are going to be parents," he said, his voice full of wonder. "We are," Zelda confirmed, her heart so full she thought it might burst. The pregnancy was not easy. Zelda suffered from terrible morning sickness in the first few months, and Russell was attentive and worried, bringing her dry toast and ginger tea, holding her hair back when she was ill. As she grew larger, he insisted she rest more, taking over many of her chores despite her protests. "You are growing our child," he said firmly. "That is work enough." Their son was born on a cold November evening with the help of the town midwife and Russell at Zelda's side. It was a long and difficult labor, and there were moments when Zelda thought she could not go on. But Russell held her hand and talked her through it, his voice steady and encouraging. When the baby finally arrived, Russell cut the cord with shaking hands, and the midwife placed the squalling infant on Zelda's chest. She looked down at her son, at his red face and tiny fists, and felt a love so fierce it nearly overwhelmed her. "He is perfect," she whispered. "He is," Russell agreed, his voice choked with emotion. "What should we name him?" They had discussed names during the pregnancy, but nothing had felt quite right. Now, looking at her son, Zelda knew. "Thomas," she said, "after my father." "Thomas Owen," Russell said, testing the name. "I like it. Welcome to the world, Thomas." The baby settled into the rhythm of their lives with surprising ease. He was a good-natured child, quick to smile and slow to fuss. Russell was a devoted father, often found walking the floor with Thomas in his arms late at night, singing soft lullabies in a voice that was rough but tender. Zelda watched them together and felt her heart expand even more. This was everything she had never dared to dream of. A home, a husband who loved her, a child, safety, peace, joy. When Thomas was 6 months old, Russell took Zelda aside one evening after the baby was asleep. "I have something for you," he said, pulling a small wooden box from his pocket. Zelda opened it to find a delicate gold locket. "Russell, it is beautiful. Open it," he urged. Inside was a tiny photograph of the three of them, taken by the traveling photographer who had passed through Williamsburg the month before. On the other side was an inscription: "To Zelda, who taught me that scars are just proof we survived. All my love, Russell." Zelda felt tears slip down her cheeks. "I love it," she said. "I love you." "I love you too," Russell said, fastening the locket around her neck. "More than I can ever say." As Thomas grew from a baby into a toddler, the ranch prospered. Russell's reputation as a horse trainer spread, and people came from miles around to buy his horses and seek his expertise. They hired 2 more hands to help with the work, and Russell began teaching Thomas about the horses, even though the boy was still quite young. "He has a gift," Russell said one evening, watching Thomas toddle fearlessly toward one of the mares. "Look how calm she is with him." Zelda smiled, her hand resting on her growing belly. Their second child was due in a few months, and while she was nervous about managing 2 small children, she was mostly just excited. "He takes after his father," she said. Their daughter was born in early spring, a beautiful baby with Russell's green eyes and Zelda's dark hair. They named her Caroline, after Russell's sister, and she was welcomed into the world with love and celebration. Life was not always easy. There were hard winters and dry summers, sick animals and broken equipment. There were nights when Thomas woke with nightmares and days when Caroline would not stop crying. But through it all, Zelda and Russell faced everything together, their love deepening with each passing year. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Russell took Zelda into town for dinner at the hotel restaurant, leaving the children with Jacob and his wife. It was the first time they had been alone together in months, and Zelda felt almost giddy with the freedom of it. Over dessert, Russell reached across the table and took her hand. "I need you to know something," he said. "What is it?" Zelda asked. "I know I tell you this all the time, but I need you to really hear me. You saved me, Zelda. Before you came, I was just going through the motions of living. I had the ranch and the horses, but I did not have a reason to care about the future. You gave me that. You gave me everything." Zelda squeezed his hand, feeling the familiar sting of happy tears. "You saved me too," she said. "You gave me a life worth living. You showed me what love really means." "We saved each other," Russell said, "and I would not change a single moment of it, not even the hard ones." "Neither would I," Zelda agreed. They returned home to find both children asleep and the house quiet. Jacob and his wife slipped out with knowing smiles, leaving them alone. Russell built up the fire while Zelda checked on the children, and then they sat together on the sofa, Zelda tucked against Russell's side. "Do you ever think about Philadelphia?" Russell asked. "About your old life?" "Sometimes," Zelda admitted, "but not with sadness anymore. More like I am thinking about a different person, someone I used to be. That girl who stepped off the stagecoach 5 years ago, she was so scared and so hurt, but she was also brave enough to start over." "She was," Russell agreed. "And I am so grateful she chose to come here, chose to give me a chance." "I am grateful too," Zelda said, "for all of it, for you, for our children, for this life we have built." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the fire burn low. Outside, the night was peaceful, filled with the sounds of crickets and the distant call of an owl. Inside, they were warm and safe and together. The years continued to pass, bringing new joys and new challenges. Thomas grew into a capable young man who shared his father's gift with horses, and Caroline proved to have her mother's love of books and learning. They added 2 more children to their family, another son named James and a daughter they called Margaret. The ranch expanded, becoming one of the most successful in the region. But for all their prosperity, Russell and Zelda never forgot where they had come from, never forgot the scars they both carried. They opened their home to others who needed refuge, offering work and safety to those who were running from their own demons. One summer afternoon, when Zelda was in her early 40s, a young woman arrived on their doorstep. She was thin and bruised, with fear in her eyes that Zelda recognized immediately. The woman had come seeking work, but Zelda saw the truth beneath the request. She gave the woman a job helping in the house and made sure she had her own secure room. Over the weeks that followed, the woman's fear slowly began to fade, replaced by tentative hope. Zelda shared her own story one evening, showing the woman her scars and explaining how she had come to be at the Owen Ranch. "You are safe here," Zelda told her. "Whatever you are running from, you do not have to run anymore." The woman wept with relief, and Zelda held her, remembering her own arrival all those years ago, remembering Russell's first words to her. "You are safe here." Russell found them a while later and understood immediately what had transpired. He caught Zelda's eye and gave her a small nod of approval and pride. This was who they were, who they had become together. Not just survivors, but helpers, guides for others walking the same dark path they had once traveled. As the children grew older and began making their own lives, Zelda and Russell found themselves with more time alone together. They took long rides across the ranch, revisiting the fields where they had first confessed their love. They sat on the porch in the evenings, holding hands and watching the sunset, talking about memories and dreams. "You remember the first day I arrived?" Zelda asked one evening. "Of course," Russell said. "You looked so scared, clutching that carpetbag like it was the only thing keeping you anchored to the earth." "I was terrified," Zelda admitted. "I thought you might be like my uncle or worse. I thought I had made the worst mistake of my life." "And now?" Russell asked, though he was smiling because he knew the answer. "Now I know it was the best decision I ever made," Zelda said. "You gave me everything I needed to heal. You saw past the scars to the person underneath." "I saw your strength," Russell said, echoing the words he had spoken so many years ago. "That is all I have ever seen." Zelda leaned over and kissed him, a gesture as natural and easy as breathing after all these years. "I love you, Russell Owen." "I love you too, Zelda Owen." Always have, always will. They watched their grandchildren grow, delighting in each new milestone. Thomas married a kind woman from town and gave them 3 grandchildren. Caroline became a teacher, marrying a gentle man who supported her dreams. James took over much of the ranch work, showing the same dedication his father had. Margaret married young and moved west with her husband, though she wrote faithfully every week. Through it all, through every joy and every sorrow, Zelda and Russell remained devoted to each other. They had built something beautiful together, something that would endure long after they were gone. Their love story became legend in Williamsburg, the tale of the mail-order bride who arrived with nothing but scars and the cowboy who saw her strength. On their 30th anniversary, their children threw them a grand celebration. The entire town turned out, along with friends and family from miles around. There was music and dancing, food and laughter. Russell stood up to give a toast, and the crowd fell silent. "30 years ago," he said, his voice still strong despite his age, "a woman stepped off a stagecoach and changed my life forever. I had placed an advertisement for a mail-order bride, thinking I needed someone to help run the house and keep me company. What I got instead was a partner, a best friend, and the great love of my life." He looked at Zelda, his green eyes still as warm as they had been that first day. "Zelda taught me that strength is not about being unbreakable. It is about breaking and choosing to keep going anyway." It is about carrying your scars with dignity and refusing to let them define you. She is the strongest person I have ever known, and I am honored to have spent 30 years at her side." The crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Zelda stood and went to Russell, throwing her arms around him as tears streamed down her face. "I love you," she said. "Thank you for seeing me." "Always," he murmured into her hair. "I will always see you." They danced together that night, moving slowly across the floor while their friends and family looked on with smiles. They were older now, with silver in their hair and lines on their faces, but the love between them was as fresh and vibrant as it had been in those early days. As the evening wound down and guests began to depart, Zelda and Russell stood on their porch one more time, looking out over the land they had worked so hard to build. The moon was full and bright, casting silver light over the fields and the horses grazing peacefully in the distance. "We did it," Zelda said softly. "We built something real, something good." "We did," Russell agreed. "And we did it together." Zelda thought about that frightened young woman who had arrived so many years ago, carrying nothing but a carpet bag and a lifetime of pain. She thought about how far she had come, how much she had healed, how much love she had found. The scars were still there, faded but permanent, a reminder of what she had endured, but they no longer defined her. They were simply part of her story, part of what had led her to this moment, to this place, to this man. "I would not change anything," she said. "Not a single moment." "Neither would I," Russell said, pulling her close. "You are my everything, Zelda. You always have been." They stood there together as the night deepened. Two souls who had found each other against all odds, who had built a life and a love that would echo through generations. The mail-order bride who had arrived with nothing but scars had found a cowboy who saw her strength. And together, they had created something beautiful and lasting, a legacy of love and healing that would endure long after they were gone. The ranch continued to thrive under James's management, and their grandchildren grew into fine adults who carried forward the values Zelda and Russell had instilled. The tradition of offering refuge to those in need continued, with the Owen Ranch becoming known as a place of safety and new beginnings. As they grew older, Zelda and Russell spent more time simply enjoying each other's company. They took morning walks together, hand in hand, talking about everything and nothing. They read to each other in the evenings, their favorite books worn and familiar. They laughed often and loved deeply, grateful for every day they had together. When Russell fell ill in his late 60s, Zelda nursed him with the same devotion he had shown her throughout their marriage. She sat by his bedside, holding his hand, reminding him of all the wonderful moments they had shared. And when he passed peacefully one autumn evening, surrounded by his family, Zelda was there, whispering her love until his very last breath. The grief was profound, but so was the gratitude. Zelda had been given a gift in Russell Owen, a chance at a life she had never dared to dream of. She had been loved fully and completely, had raised children and grandchildren who knew what real love looked like. The scars on her body had not faded, but their power to hurt her had long since disappeared, healed by years of kindness and devotion. She lived another 10 years, spending her time with her children and grandchildren, working in her beloved garden, and helping other women who found their way to the ranch seeking refuge. She told her story often, wanting others to know that healing was possible, that love could be found even in the darkest places. On quiet evenings, she would sit on the porch with the locket Russell had given her so many years ago clasped in her hand, watching the sunset and remembering. She remembered the fear she had felt stepping off that stagecoach. She remembered Russell's first words to her, the patience he had shown, the love he had given so freely. She remembered every kiss, every laugh, every moment of joy they had shared. When Zelda passed peacefully in her sleep at the age of 78, she was buried next to Russell under the oak tree on the hill overlooking the ranch. The entire town came to pay their respects, along with the many women whose lives she had touched and helped to heal. Her children and grandchildren gathered around the grave, sharing stories of her strength and kindness. Thomas spoke of her bravery in starting over. Caroline talked about her wisdom and gentleness. James described her unwavering love for their father. Margaret read from one of the many letters Zelda had written over the years, filled with encouragement and hope. But perhaps the most fitting tribute came from one of the women Zelda had helped in her later years, a young mother who had fled an abusive situation and found sanctuary at the Owen Ranch. She stood up and shared her own story, and then concluded with words that captured the essence of who Zelda had been. "Mrs. Owen taught me that scars do not make us broken," the woman said, her voice strong and clear. "They make us survivors. She taught me that real love does not hurt, that real strength is found in gentleness, and that it is never too late to start over. She saved my life, just as Mr. Owen saved hers all those years ago. And now I am helping others, passing forward the gift she gave me. That is her legacy, and it will live on long after all of us are gone." The family erected a simple stone marker with an inscription that Russell himself had written years before, tucked away in his papers to be found after his death. It read, "Here lies Zelda Owen, beloved wife, mother, and friend. She arrived with scars but departed having touched countless lives with her strength, her courage, and her boundless capacity for love. She taught us all what it means to heal, to hope, and to help others find their way home." The ranch remained in the family for generations, each one adding their own chapter to the story while honoring the foundation that Zelda and Russell had built. The tradition of offering refuge continued, and the Owen name became synonymous with compassion and second chances. Years turned into decades, and the story of the mail-order bride and the cowboy became part of Williamsburg's history, told and retold by families gathered around dinner tables and friends sitting on front porches. It was a story of survival and healing, of seeing past surface wounds to the strength beneath, of building something beautiful from the broken pieces of the past. Children grew up hearing about Zelda Wright, who arrived in Williamsburg with nothing but scars and a hope for something better, and Russell Owen, who looked at her and saw not damage but incredible strength. They learned that love was not about perfection but about acceptance, not about forgetting the past but about choosing to build a better future together. The story reminded people that everyone carried scars, some visible and some hidden, but that those scars did not determine their worth or their capacity for joy. It taught that real love was patient and kind, that it saw the person beneath the pain and chose them anyway. It showed that healing was possible, that new beginnings could be found, and that sometimes the bravest thing a person could do was simply show up and try again. In the little cemetery on the hill, under the spreading branches of that old oak tree, Zelda and Russell rested side by side, their love story complete, but never forgotten. The wind whispered through the leaves, carrying with it the echoes of laughter and conversation, of promises made and kept, of a love that had healed two broken souls and created something eternal. And on summer evenings, when the sun painted the sky in shades of gold and crimson, it was not uncommon for people to walk up that hill and stand quietly by the graves, paying respects to a couple who had shown them what was possible. They would read the inscription, smile at the truth of it, and return to their own lives with renewed hope, because that was the real gift Zelda and Russell had given, not just to each other, but to everyone who knew their story. They had proven that no one was too broken to be loved, that scars were just proof of survival, and that strength came in many forms. They had shown that real courage was found in vulnerability, that healing happened one day at a time, and that love, true love, could transform everything. The mail-order bride who arrived with nothing but scars had found a cowboy who saw her strength, and together they had built a legacy that would endure for generations. Their story was one of hope and healing, of patience and devotion, of two people who found each other in the darkest moments and chose to build toward the light. It was a love story for the ages, set against the backdrop of the American West, where life was hard but hearts could be tender, where survival was a daily battle but love could still flourish. It was the story of Zelda and Russell Owen, whose names would forever be remembered not for what they had lost, but for what they had found in each other and shared with the world. And in the end, that was the most beautiful part of all. Not that they had survived, though they had. Not that they had loved, though they did with all their hearts, but that they had used their own healing to help others heal, their own love to show others what love could be. They had taken their pain and transformed it into purpose, their scars into symbols of strength. The ranch stood as testament to their vision, generation after generation continuing the work they had started. The women who found refuge there learned the same lessons Zelda had learned all those years ago, that they were worthy of love, that their scars did not define them, that strength came from surviving and choosing to keep going. As seasons changed and years rolled on, the story of Zelda and Russell remained constant, a North Star for anyone who felt lost or broken or afraid. It reminded them that somewhere, somehow, there was a place for them to land, a person who would see past the damage to the strength beneath, a love that would heal rather than harm. That was the true legacy of the Owen Ranch, the real story behind the legend. It was about more than just one mail-order bride and one cowboy. It was about the ripple effect of kindness, the transformative power of love, and the truth that seeing someone's strength when they cannot see it themselves is perhaps the greatest gift one person can give another. Zelda Wright had stepped off a stagecoach in the summer of 1872, carrying nothing but scars and a desperate hope for something better. She found Russell Owen, a man who looked at her and saw not weakness but incredible strength. Together, they built a life that mattered, a love that endured, and a legacy that would touch countless lives for generations to come. Their story was complete, their circle closed, their love immortalized not just in stone markers and family memories, but in the very fabric of the community they had helped to build. They had shown that healing was possible, that love could triumph over fear, and that sometimes the bravest thing you could do was simply choose to try again. And so the tale of the mail-order bride and the cowboy lived on, whispered on the wind, carried in the hearts of those who knew it, passed down through generations as a reminder of what was possible when two broken people found each other and chose to heal together. It was a story of scars and strength, of fear and faith, of the incredible power of being truly seen and loved for exactly who you are, in Williamsburg, Virginia. On the land that Zelda and Russell had worked and loved, life continued. Children played in the fields where Zelda had once walked, gathering wildflowers and dreaming of the future. Horses grazed peacefully in pastures that Russell had built with his own hands. The house stood strong and welcoming, still offering refuge to those who needed it, still embodying the values of compassion and second chances. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when the light was just right, people swore they could see two figures walking hand in hand across the fields, their love transcending time and death, their story eternal. Whether it was truth or just wishful thinking did not really matter. What mattered was that Zelda and Russell had lived, had loved, and had left the world better than they found it. That was enough. That was everything. And their love, born from pain but nurtured with patience and devotion, continued to shine as a beacon of hope for anyone who needed to believe that happy endings were real, that love could heal, and that strength could be found even in the deepest scars.